Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the opening of the International Built Environment Week, or IBEW 2020. I'm Jacqueline, your host for this afternoon. The IBEW, presented by the Building and Construction Authority of Singapore in partnership with REIT Exhibitions and 12 trade associations and chambers, is the first fully integrated event in the Asia Pacific covering the entire built environment life cycle and value chain. The inaugural edition, held in September last year, saw more than 12,000 participants worldwide converging in Singapore to exchange ideas, widen networks, and discover new opportunities. This year, we are unable to gather in person due to COVID-19, and so we have moved the IBEW online. IBEW 2020 will continue to be a gathering of the like-minded in the built environment sector to exchange views and ideas for the next bound. We have lined up a series of thematic weeks comprising webinars, virtual exhibitions, and networking sessions throughout the month of September. These offerings will focus on how the built environment sector can emerge stronger and build greater resilience and adaptability through innovation. To kick off this afternoon's program, we are pleased to have Mr. Desmond Lee, Minister for National Development and Minister in charge of Social Services Integration, address us. Minister, please.
Good afternoon and welcome to the International Built Environment Week 2020. This year's edition is being held in unusual circumstances. It will be entirely digital. The activities will also be spread out over a month as we are focusing on immediate issues relating to COVID-19. While we cannot meet face-to-face, the silver lining is that going digital has allowed us to reach out to many more people in many cities and countries. Now, many built environment companies, and in particular our construction companies, have been hit very hard by COVID-19 in Singapore and around the world. In Singapore, on a quarter-on-quarter annualized basis, the construction sector contracted by 97.1% in the second quarter of this year. The difficulties faced by our industry are significant and for some, existential. These include work suspension, supply chain disruptions, cash flow issues, to name a few. With the constant threat of a resurgence of infection looming over us, restarting work has also been a challenge, with workers under quarantine, worksite practices requiring redesign, and payments being delayed. We've therefore had to have a constant dialogue and adopt a much more collaborative approach between government, trade associations, and firms in our sector. Now, all the more so since we are all in uncharted terrain. We have organized many webinars, online clinics, and site visits to take in your feedback and to better understand the issues on the ground. BCA and other government agencies are leaning forward and working with you and your industry associations. For example, the Singapore Contractors Association Limited, the Specialist Trade Alliance of Singapore, and the Real Estate Developers Association of Singapore, to find practical solutions to address restart issues. For example, we've taken in your feedback and introduced more flexibility in the COVID-safe restart criteria, so that you can restart work quickly and safely. We have also made information more accessible to you and easier to navigate. BCA now functions as the one-stop shop front for all construction restart matters. We have restart support centers and disseminated a convenient information packet to help your projects restart. We've also provided financial assistance to help our companies tide through this difficult period. The government has recently extended support for salaries of local employees in the construction sector through the Job Support Scheme until March next year. We've also provided significant waivers and rebates on the foreign worker levy and launched the $1.36 billion construction support package to help you cushion the impact of COVID-19. Together, we've made good progress in restarting work. We completed the testing of workers in all dormitories last month. By mid-August, more than 90% of construction projects were approved for restart. But while we have made progress together, the construction sector is not out of the woods. There is the risk of resurgence of infection if we are not careful. There will be ups and downs along the way, progress as well as setbacks. We will need to remain vigilant and continue to ensure compliance with restart requirements. For this, digitalization can help. Adopting digital solutions can allow our firms to resume work safely despite the challenges posed by physical distancing measures. For example, TPS Construction has instituted automated temperature taking and safe entry registration at their worksites. I visited one of their worksites recently and saw how these solutions have allowed them to restart their projects quickly and safely. We've been encouraging our firms to adopt similar solutions to ensure that your worksites remain safe. Now, on this note, I'm glad to announce that we will set aside up to $20 million for the Advanced Digital Solution Scheme, or ADS. Firms can use ADS solutions, including biometric facial recognition systems, Bluetooth-enabled wearables, and cameras enabled by artificial intelligence to keep your worksites and workers safe. Even as we deal with immediate restart issues, we must continue to improve our work processes to remain viable in a COVID-19 world. Cloud-based solutions can help. Cloud-based solutions allow for project files to be seamlessly shared, accessed, tracked, and updated by different stakeholders throughout the building lifecycle. This includes building specifications. Our design consultants can avoid the time-consuming process of creating their project specifications from scratch. We've worked with our partners, the Singapore Institute of Architects, the Institution of Engineers Singapore, and the Association of Consulting Engineers Singapore, who have jointly developed the Intelligent National Productivity and Quality Specifications, or INPQS for short, which will be available from November of this year. The cloud-based system contains standard templates of project specifications for the industry to adapt and customize for your building projects. You're facing one of the toughest crises our generation has ever seen. The built environment sector, both locally and globally, will need to navigate a new normal, one that is unfamiliar to us and daunting. But if we put our minds to it, I believe we can find ways to overcome the challenges ahead and even identify new opportunities. Even as IBEW goes digital this year, it continues to be a platform for the entire built environment value chain to gather, exchange ideas and best practices, and generate new solutions to advance the sector. Some of our local firms have embraced innovative practices and adapted their businesses to become more resilient. They will be sharing their experiences and innovations at IBEW. So do find some time to join our webinars and virtual trade shows. On this note, I wish everyone a productive and rewarding International Built Environment Week 2020 as we seek to position ourselves to emerge stronger from this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for the inspiring message. I'm sure all of us are looking forward to sharing experiences and expanding our networks as we work towards overcoming the disruptions caused by COVID-19 and emerge stronger and more resilient in the post-pandemic era. Ladies and gentlemen, we have prepared an opening video to give a flavor of IBEW 2020. Please enjoy.
The world as we know it has changed since the outbreak of COVID-19. There are grave new challenges which we must overcome. While we work on overcoming these challenges, where do we see the built environment sector heading? How do we navigate COVID and reinvent the way we design, build, and operate our buildings? Could innovation be the answer, allowing us to do things better, faster, and smarter? This year's International Built Environment Week, or IBEW echoes our aspiration to conquer COVID and advance the built environment sector to emerge stronger through innovation. The digital IBEW will continue to be the forum for discourse, a platform to learn from those showing the way forward, and offer opportunities for collaboration. Join the conversations and share experiences at the online networking and engagement sessions at the virtual trade shows. Let us look ahead and focus on how we can emerge stronger together. Welcome to IBEW 2020.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to declare the IBEW 2020 officially open. Thank you, and do continue to join us at the Spotlight Plenary that's coming up, as well as the rest of IBEW. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the IBEW 2020 Spotlight Plenary. Our panel of experts are gathered here this afternoon to explore how businesses can adjust to the new normal post-COVID by leveraging innovation and technology as key catalysts to build greater resilience and adaptability. A few admin instructions before we begin. There will be a live Q&A session after the sharing session by our speakers. For those with questions for our speakers, please key in your question in the Ask a Question tab located at the bottom of your screen. This afternoon's Spotlight Plenary is moderated by Mr. Will Miles. Will brings real passion to the transformation of the built environment sector, driven by a desire to improve industry performance and demonstrate value for money. Will's career has spanned the built environment life cycle from designing and building real estate and infrastructure projects to advising on multi-billion-dollar mining and industry investments. He has also led consulting businesses in Europe and the Middle East, as well as the professional body RICS across the Asia Pacific. Well, I'm sure all of you are excited for the Spotlight Plenary to be underway, so without further ado, let me hand the floor over to our moderator. Over to you, Will.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Spotlight Plenary, Emerging Stronger Through Innovation. So it's great to have you all joining us, kicking off a month of activity at IBEW. We all know that built environment assets take years to deliver. We all know that built environment assets last for decades, and yet the last year has heralded great change, and for good reason. Often, changes with only a few hours' notice could in fact have an impact lasting decades. All of this is going to shape what assets are required, how they're delivered, how they're operated and run, with the safety of the citizen and the safety of the workforce at the forefront of thinking. So Minister Desmond Lee raised a number of themes: industry support by government, industry restart, digitization, collaboration, standardization, resilience. And I think these are all going to be hot topics for us during IBEW. So today I've got a great panel with us, and I'll introduce you one by one now. They'll each have 5 minutes to give their opening statement, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So first up, I would like to introduce Mr. Bernie Devine. Bernie is Regional Director, Asia Pacific with Yardi Systems. Bernie has over 30 years of experience dedicated to real estate and technology. He's a leader in digital transformation in real estate and using data to create a more competitive and collaborative environment. Currently responsible for the growth of Yardi Systems in Asia Pacific, he supports real estate clients with retail, commercial, industrial, residential, and mixed-use assets, helping them grow their operations, create efficiencies, and gain better insights into their business. Second up, I'd like to introduce Mr. Wong Hing Fine, who is Group CEO of Sabana Jurong. Mr. Wong, under his leadership, Sabana Jurong has grown into a global urban infrastructure and managed services consulting firm with over 16,500 employees in more than 120 offices worldwide. Mr. Wong is currently a board member of the Building and Construction Authority and member of the World Green Building Council Corporate Advisory Board. He's also an adjunct professor at Singapore's Nanyang Technological University, having held senior leadership positions across numerous industries over the last 40 years. Lastly, I'd like to introduce Mr. Damien Delem. Damien is Cluster President for Schneider Electric, Singapore, Malaysia, and Brunei. In this role, Damien is responsible for the alignment of corporate strategy and business operations, as well as oversight of all commercial initiatives, operations, and implementation. Prior to this role, Damien led the end-to-end supply chain organization for Schneider Electric in East Asia, Japan, and Pacific across 18 countries. He first joined Schneider over 25 years ago. So our panel, ladies and gentlemen, covers everything from design through to facility management, from energy optimization through to asset intelligence. So first up, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Bernie Devine, to give his introduction. Bernie, over to you.
Thanks, Will. Just going to share my screen. So thanks, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present. I'd very much like to give you some insight in some of the key things that impact on our thinking around innovation in the real estate industry. And to do that, first up, I wanted to share a little story about my history and about the history of the industry as it relates to business process, because people often ask me what I do, and I'd say probably the key thing that I do is I bring process to real estate. That's really been my focus for a very long time. And this diagram's a little story both for myself personally, for the organisation Yardi, in parallel and more recently together, focusing on the key issues in the industry. And even today, people come talk to me and say, I really have a problem with my asset management data. I struggle to get good asset management data. And when I talk to people about why is that, I quickly understand that in many cases, they have data in silos, data that's all separate and it's not connected to all the other data they have. And as a result, they get part of the picture. They don't get information. And what I call information is data in context. And by standardizing process, which is a lot of what I've done over time, and by standardizing data and getting people to work together on collaborative platforms, a lot of this gets solved. And it also gives you the opportunity as an organization to introduce improvements in process and to introduce these days new tools to further automate process. So you can see from here that historically we started with charts with drawings on them that said this is the process to follow. And today, as an industry, we're toying with the idea of artificial intelligence and figuring out how to really apply that. And I'll talk about that in a little more depth in a minute. I think it's important in terms of understanding context. Who is Yardi? And it's real simple. And why is innovation for the real estate industry important to us? First of all, we've spent 40 years working with the real estate industry, providing ERP platforms, helping automate business process and drive improvements in performance. We've grown to $1 billion+ business today in quite a few countries, quite a few locations. And still today, the key focus of what we do is helping real estate organizations improve the performance of their business. And part of that is around data. Part of it is around process. And anything that's good for the real estate industry is really good for us. So, I think in relation to the minister's comments, the ideas he's put forward, the suggestions he's put forward, the programs he's putting forward are certainly a fantastic step in the right direction. And with the diversity of what we see in the industry, in terms of retail struggling, in terms of logistics at the opposite end to that, there's certainly a need to do some things to help out. So as we look at the real estate industry globally, and as an organisation that's been around for 40 years, some people would think, oh, it's probably a bit old and tired today. But I'd have to say the opposite is really true. As an organisation, one of the things that we really focus on is innovation. We see ourselves as the innovation partner for the industry. And we basically have a series of programs where we establish startups inside our own organisation, enable them, find people with fantastic ideas and help them grow those ideas into products and services and into businesses and make them part of our organisation. So that means, for example, today, working with a bunch of different AI engines, seeing how we can get those to deliver benefits to the real estate industry, to our customers. And that means things like looking at millions of work orders that our clients generate, putting them in front of artificial intelligence and saying, what can we determine from this in terms of patterns and tools and ways to improve performance and further automate process so that people can actually get on with the business of serving their tenants as opposed to worrying about work orders. And similarly, at the back end of that, also trying to figure out, is there ways we can prevent the work orders from happening in the first place? What are the patterns that we're seeing here? Other examples would be where we look at IoT and say, what we really want to do is properly automate IoT within real estate. Don't just put in connected devices, but connect those devices to business processes. And I'll talk about an example of that in a minute. And I think that the other thing is really, as a result of this, what happens in our organisation constantly is things grow, become successful, become part of our larger business, or sometimes they don't. And we put them aside and move those people onto other things to work on and try again. But I think the important thing is, if I look today, there's about 12 or 13 separate sort of startups within our organisation, all focused on things that our customers are worried about, they see as pain points. In particular, in the last 6 months, we've developed and delivered not only a new product that focus on tenant risk, tenant health, collections, deferrals, abatements, but also trained all of our existing clients, users in how to deploy and use that tool effectively. So we did that pretty rapidly in response to the situation. But I guess just very briefly, I think a big part of innovation in the real estate industry is, keep trying new stuff on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's also about answering a question. And the question I always like people that try and answer when they're looking for what can I do as an innovation for the industry is to answer the question of what are you selling for to who and for how much? In other words, what really is the product? Who's going to benefit and how much is it going to benefit them? And I find that's really an area where a lot of people struggle. And that, to me, is an indication that they're not going to succeed, that they don't really have a business case for their solution. Example of innovation. So, lots of people talk about IoT. Yeah, let's connect your phone to your light bulb and your thermostat and your door lock. Fantastic. I guess what we've done is thought that, for an individual property, that's fine. For the individual user, that's fantastic. But we can actually do much more for our customers. When we look at the fact that we've got 4 million apartments managed day to day in our system in terms of leasing and in terms of maintenance and etc. We've actually taken that a step further and said, don't just connect a phone to a bunch of IoT devices, but connect it to business process. Connect those IoT devices to business process. So that means that tenants can not only serve their own requirements through an app on a phone, but it also means, for example, the property manager can manage vacant units without having to have multiple phones or whatever and do all that sort of stuff. So really properly solving the problem and also helping to better understand energy and energy usage and all sorts of other things so that things can be improved in terms of how maintenance is delivered, being able to by monitoring the performance of devices, predict failures rather than wait for them, and therefore deliver a better service to tenants. So there's some examples of innovation, but like I said, the important thing for us is really to be continuously innovating, and with, I guess, more than 10,000 clients in the real estate industry globally, a key part of that is listening to our clients, understanding what their challenges are, seeing what emerging technologies there are, and figuring out how we can apply those technologies to the problems that our clients have. So that's what we do today. We've always done, and we continue to do. So yeah, thanks, Will.
Bernie, many thanks for that. Can I encourage those in the audience to share your questions as early as possible? We'd like to make the session as interactive as possible. For now, though, over to Damien, and we look forward to your introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone. My pleasure to be with you today. Just let me know the slides are coming up. All right, so my pleasure to be with you today. Actually, I'm currently in KL, Malaysia, testing the RGL between Singapore and Malaysia. A very interesting experience. So Schneider Electric, well, we are a technology company. We provide products, solutions, systems, software that really help the overall industry perform better when it comes to energy management and industrial automation. We're a very old MNC with more than 180 years old, I would say. But in the past 10 years, definitely we've seen the IoT revolution really impacting significantly our business. And as you can see on the front page, we say here, together with our logo, we say life is on. Well, we believe that life is on when the power is on, when the lights are on, and when the electricity is running through the building, through the facilities. So as a global company, as you can see here, we have a global footprint, and we achieve 27 billion euro revenues last year. We have more than 130,000 employees worldwide, with a big portion of them being in Asia Pacific being our biggest region in the world. And we have two main businesses. One is around energy management, which is the core of Schneider Electric, and the other one is around industrial automation. Trying to keep the presentation short, I really tried to reflect on which value and which problem we should focus on when we talk, and I'm sure we'll come back to that later in the discussion. And I really wanted to mention efficiency, and efficiency for a sustainable future, which is what we do every day for our customers. Efficiency on the energy side, through savings, through electrification. And when I say electrification, think microgrid, think really bringing access to energy to remote places in the world, which is a big part of our business. And of course, and I'm sure we'll come back to that, decarbonization, sustainability, which definitely coming out of COVID-19 will even be more stronger, right? On the right side, and that's the part of our business related to the industrial automation, we talk about process efficiency. Process efficiency in the manufacturing world, process efficiency in the industrial world, in the oil and gas industry. And of course, behind process efficiency, you need, first of all, the asset performance, the reliability of your assets. And probably we could come back to also the new means through software analytics to really talk about predictive maintenance as one value proposition, not forgetting, as I mentioned earlier, sustainability and efficiency. So in a nutshell, and to really keep it short, we believe that our technologies today enable the digital transformation of both industrial automation and energy management. We have in a catalog historically had a long list of products, hardware, OT space is where we come from. And over the past years, we have connected this OT space on-premise and then lately on cloud with software and analytics, which really help take the performance of the manufacturing industry to the next level, as well as the performance of the energy management to the next level. Thank you, Will.
Damien, thank you for that. Keep the questions rolling in, everyone. And we will now pass over to the last of our introductions. Wong Hing Fan, over to you.
Well, good afternoon, Will, and everybody live stream. Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share with you today how Sabana Jurong has emerged stronger through the various innovations that we have done. And our innovation journey really began 5 years ago with the merger between Sabana and Jurong. Well, the first thing that we have done in our innovation is really to relook at our business model. And at that time, our focus was really to grow our overseas revenue. Now, today, 55% of our revenue of 1.8 billion really comes from all our overseas operations. And the first 6 months of this year, our operations worldwide has seen a little impact, from the COVID. Of course, really, each of the countries that we operate in 40 countries today. Each of those countries, the impact will be quite varied, and there are 3 reasons for this. First is that you must also realize that in the built environment industry, we probably are the first to experience any upturn, but also the last to feel a downturn. So I guess for us, we think that the worst probably will come next year rather than towards this year. The other reasons, of course, is that if you look at the chart in front of you, we have people on the ground. So we depend less on our talent to fly around the world to service our clients. So in a way, we have managed to keep our operations going and keep our service level to our clients. Third, of course, is that later on I will cover a bit that the SGI Group really leverages on technology extensively to try and provide a sustainable solutions to our client worldwide. And later on, we'll show some of this. And on balance, we try and also ensure that our revenue pillars are complementary and as well as resilient in such uncertain times. So today, you will see that we have 3 core pillars of our business: the urban development, infrastructure, as well as managed services. On the urban side, I would say that the COVID has impacted a lot of our businesses. But however, on the infrastructure side, we are seeing that a lot of our overseas government have been pushing out infrastructure projects in order to take up the slack in the construction industry. And of course, our managed services have been able to provide a stable and recurrent source of income. And the other thing, of course, is that today we provide end-to-end solutions to our clients. And that has proven to be a very strong competitive advantage in these times. For example, today we did a lot of conversion for the Singapore government, converting some of the public facilities into community care facilities, and that is delivered through the integration of our services. So in response to COVID, governments and companies are developing and adapting and delivering solutions across the communities and beyond. Responding to such a complex situation often requires a multidisciplinary and collaborative approach. And this is the case for the medical industry as they find ways to combat the virus. So likewise, in the built environment industry, increasingly we must innovate our use of technology and our work processes to support this multidisciplinary and collaborative approach. And this is supported by a mindset change to change and adapt. Let me just cover our digital technologies. At Sabana Jurong, we embrace wider adoption of digital tools in the way we work, and we leverage on 3D visualization capabilities such as BIM, VDC, virtual reality, as well as augmented reality in order to deliver smart solutions to our client. Also piloting the integration of various technologies across the value chain to help construction companies ensure safe workplace. So if you look at the picture on the right, it's a blue pass that we are now piloting to ensure that workplaces are safe and contractors would have instant information insofar as how the various categories of workers have integrated on the work site. Yeah. So lastly, if you look at our tagline, building cities and shaping lives, expresses how every project or undertaking is an opportunity for us to fulfill aspirations and enrich lives for the community that we are working for. And the bold red dot in our logo radiates creativity and innovation, and is emblematic of Singapore, where the group is headquartered. So with that, I hand you back to Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. So it's good to see you highlighting a couple of your innovations there. We've got questions coming in, and I'd like actually to start off with a more general question for everyone, just to get your view, the view of all the panel really, on what's your view on the outlook for the built environment, particularly emerging post-COVID trends, and perhaps is innovation getting easier as a result of COVID? So maybe to kick us off, Bernie, do you want to go first with that?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Will. That's a really good question. I think a couple of things. One, in terms of getting back there, in terms of innovation. So I think there's been a number of things that have happened by necessity. We've seen just in terms of, I guess, my area of expertise, business process, we've seen a rapid adoption of DocuSign and other such tools in terms of electronic signatures, so that bits of paper don't have to travel around the office. That's been really important. Similarly, taking that to the next level in terms of looking at both tenant engagement, more generally occupant engagement, and then the broader issue of and things like vendor engagement. Again, a big part of it has been about getting all of that online. So we've seen a rapid increase in adoption of those tools. I think more broadly, though, I think there's, as I alluded to in my introduction, the issue of retail struggling and hospitality, obviously, along with that. But at the other extreme, seeing logistics, and in particular anything to do with supply chains just going off the charts in terms of demand for facilities. And the reality we've always known is that, yes, logistics has been going great for a number of years, but if you look at the logistics infrastructure per head of population across Asia versus other parts of the world, there's still a long way to go in this market. So a lot to do. And I think there are a bunch of things that now people are really thinking seriously about in terms of maintenance, in terms of cleanliness, in terms of just business process, how people come in and out of buildings. Lots of really interesting challenges that are being rapidly solved. I think there were people who 2 years ago were marketing UV light sterilization systems for escalators. They couldn't sell them to anyone. But in the last 6 months, they just couldn't make enough, right? The market just absolutely changed for those guys. And good luck to them. Everyone's finally realized what they'd been talking about for years. And there is an element of that, along with this real need to really think about, listen to, understand the problems. For me, the important thing is listen to those problems, understand what's the business solution, what's the long term. What are we going to do differently over the long term, not just the quick fixes today, because we have to do those, some urgent problem, fix it, move on. But how are our businesses going to change in the long term? And I think that's the thing that people really need to apply their minds to and think about, because I think that's where the future really is, and that's where the innovation that will stick really is.
Thank you for that. So, Damien, would you see things the same way or differently?
No, indeed, I think very much in the same way. I think COVID, first of all, for the built industry, is really an unprecedented crisis, right? I mean, I heard the minister say before in Q2 minus 97%. I mean, we think a lot about the airline industry. We think a lot about the hospitality industry really going down, I would say, during the COVID-19 crisis, but definitely we should not forget the construction sector. So it's going to take a while for the sector to recover. Now, I want to think, being an optimistic by nature, that I would say post-COVID, and we start to see more and more signs of that. There will be really expectation for more resilience, more efficiency, more sustainability, right? That's one of the very few small good things during COVID-19 is the Earth was a better planet, right? I mean, with everything stopped somehow, we realized that really nature was coming back to the city, and really, I would say the overall our planet was really feeling much better during this time. Probably one of the very few positive points, I would say. And then another big changes and transformation is around the need for more well-being, more comfort in the office building environment. So nothing new, but definitely in a post-COVID-19 world, really a strong acceleration of all these value points with definitely technologies coming into place to help accelerate these trends.
Thanks for that. So acceleration emerging as a theme there. Mr. Wong, how do you see it?
Well, I think, Will, as the Minister has said, I think going forward, the built environment is going to be very challenging. In the immediate terms, companies will have to try and cope with all the additional safe distancing measure and how to create a safe working environment. And all this leads to additional costs and time, which currently under the contractual terms that a lot of projects are being built or undertaken have not been able to cater to such instances. And then in the longer term, you're going to cope with rolling out new technology. And the fact of it is that the built environment sector it's probably one of the sectors that is quite late in the adoption of digital technology. And a lot of our people in the sector will have to learn new skills and a new way of doing the work. So that's another complication coming up. And of course, changes in the demand from our clients and so on will also change the way in which we design and engineer projects going forward. So I see that the next few years will be extremely challenging times for the built environment, and on top of that, you'll never be sure whether there will be another pandemic. So, and the nature of our work has always been to close interaction, face-to-face discussion. So it's going to be quite tough for the sector to try and cope with both new demands as well as higher costs.
Thanks for that. I'm going to pick up on that theme, if I may. The one, you use the word slow, but I guess conservative or risk averse is often used as the word. And I'll lead into one of the questions from the audience, and that is, what policy changes could government make to encourage innovation in the industry? So maybe if you could all have in mind one policy change that you think would have a positive impact. Bernie, any view on that at all?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I think first of all, I'd say that as I work with clients across the region in Asia Pac, Singapore historically has been one of the governments that has been quite proactive and supportive of both innovation and adoption of technology. Quite a standout, I would say, compared to a lot of the other countries in the region, and I've often recognised that publicly. And I think now is a time more than ever where that's an important aspect of what needs to happen here. There are, we know there's a lot of things we don't know. We know there's probably things out there we don't know. And really, a crisis is a situation where, first of all, you've got to stop the ship from leaking and get it back on an even keel. But you really got to think hard about what can we do differently, and that in part is about very much what the topic of this session is about, innovation, and therefore programs that support, foster, encourage innovation and reward organizations for innovation. So, it's one thing to have I guess an incubator for startups. I think it's definitely part of the supply chain. But at the other end, one of the things that Singapore's been quite good at for some time is rewarding large corporations for actually paying attention to what those incubators are doing and adopting new technologies. And I would encourage the government to really continue to do that and to expand in that area. I think there's it will not only help organizations become more efficient and effective, but one of the interesting things is, some people think, oh, technology puts people out of jobs. What we've seen after 50 years of computer technology is it hasn't put anyone out of a job. It's actually created far more. So, and I think particularly for the real estate industry, as we adopt things like IoT and smart cities, and smart communities and smart buildings, we really need to encourage organizations to push the boundaries and understand what is possible, and to think very creatively about what that means. How can we deliver a better outcome, but still pay attention to the key issues around health, safety, privacy, etc. So yeah, I would encourage the government to think about any programs that continue to encourage that entire, I guess, value chain to work together on innovation.
Yeah, so I pick out, I guess, the collaboration aspect there, but the reward mechanisms, I like that. I mean, that covers everything from what you value in procurement through to where you place your support to industry as well. So good call out there. Damien, what about yourself?
I would just add to that one thing and say, really one of the key differences in Singapore is that organizations are actually proud to talk about their innovation and technology adoption. And I think, that's because of the part of the culture that the government's encouraged, and that needs to be continued.
Thanks. Damien.
Yeah, well, I mean, and again, we heard it from the minister. I think in front of the crisis happening in industry, I think the short-term incentives and financial measure, and to really help the different players in the sector, especially the SMEs, work is now. Of course, different countries would have, unfortunately, I would say, deeper or leaner pockets, I would say, to support, but any short-term scheme is always welcome when you're in a survival mode. I would say also another few words that I capture from the minister's speech earlier is a BCA one-stop shop concept, which I found very interesting. And to me, really, if there's one thing government probably can help, that's an industry that remains very complicated when it comes to compliance, when it comes to the number of players in the ecosystem, especially in the government public ecosystem that you need to deal with. So definitely I'm moving towards a one-stop shop when it comes to regulations and really all the different agencies is very welcome to help moving forward and recover. And definitely beyond that, allowing more links within the ecosystem, because I think that's also coming out of the crisis. One of the positive outcome is people realize that really when we get together, we're stronger. So SMEs together with the MNCs or bigger size companies, but also not forgetting startups in the innovation space have really all of them a key role to play. So a lot of opportunities there, and government can play a key role to get the ball moving. Not forgetting, hopefully, the sustainability side, meaning that really let's take this opportunity to really move to the next level when it comes to green building, efficient and sustainable building, I would say.
Thank you for that. Mr. Wong, policy changes. So what would you call out?
Well, Will, I think, if you look across the world, and we operate in more than 40 countries, Singapore has one of the most proactive and forward-looking policy for companies, including the built environment companies. But one thing that I think going forward we need to think about is really the introduction of new innovations. Yeah. And obviously, new innovations means that you may not necessarily be adhering to some of the current policies or requirements. So we need to cater to such instances, new ways of doing things, or new processes to take the industry forward. Currently, I think the policies, if you don't adhere to certain requirements, you may not qualify. So I think going forward, to encourage further innovation, we must be daring enough to adopt some of this innovation and do pilot schemes to test out those innovations to make sure that the benefits are clearly demonstrated. Not be so afraid to adopt some of these new benefits.
Thanks for that. So I'm going to take another of the questions from the floor here and paraphrase it. It's quite a long question, but the essence of it is, so what is it that's holding us back? What's stopping us emerging stronger through innovation? And rather than going one by one, who'd like to offer themselves to answer that one?
I think I will, from my perspective, is really the cost of implementing those innovations. At the moment, in such bad economic times, companies may find it difficult to come up with budgets to implement some of these innovations. So that could be one thing that we have to take a look at. And conditions are not improving. So one really needs to look at whether there is money to do what you want to do.
Yeah, well, I'd add to that. So an interesting point. We've been supporting a survey across the region for a couple of years now that's focused on the real estate industry and technology adoption. And in fact, talking to that survey and getting input from some of the larger players and some of the smaller players in the real estate industry has shown that, in fact, one of the key barriers to innovation traditionally has been a resistance to change. Now, understandable. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That sort of mentality. But yeah, it's really a case of there's a strong culture in many organisations of show me where someone's done this already. Give me some reassurance that I'm not going to lose my job if I approve this. And I guess there's reason for that. But at the same time, I think that dire situations call for courageous acts. And if I'd say anything, I think encouraging people to be courageous and to take a little more risk with, even still keep it sensible, don't go crazy, but take a broader view of risk on change, right? I think there's no question that some segments of the real estate industry, yes, financially will struggle to invest, and there should be support for that. But I also think another key part here is really think about that change management, put in place programs, support and encouragement so that people feel more comfortable adopting innovative solutions and try them. Okay, try 10, 3 fail, 7 succeed, whatever that might be. I go back to a story a long time, many years ago of a bank, a private banking group, billionaires who will remain nameless in the Middle East, who went to Africa with $3 billion and made 1,000 investments and said, a third of them will never see the money again. A third of them will probably break even, and some will be absolute unicorns. That's the way it is when you invest, and that's really the attitude you need to bring, is that you're not going to put all your eggs in one basket, but by the same token, you're not just always going to take the safest bet. There needs to be innovation here.
Well, Bernie, I agree with you, and one of the key things in our industry is really the professional liability. While we propose new changes and so on, there's a liability, for a lot of professionals in this industry, and that's really also something that we have to look at. If everybody feels they will affect their future livelihood, nobody is going to be prepared to adopt the changes that you want.
I was going to add on this.
There's no lawyers on the call. Sorry, over to you, Damien.
Yeah, I was going to say that I agree beyond the resistance to change. Our industry has been very traditional by nature and not very digital savvy, right? So to me, that's probably also one of the constraints we have compared to other industries. Now, moving forward with the environment and the additional constraint that our industry will have to live with, right? We talked earlier also about social distancing and the loss of productivity and efficiency on sites. I think this is where innovation will anyway come in, and people will have no choice but to embrace the changes and really and the transformation, because it's going to become a matter of survival. And in this kind of situation, normally human beings become quite creative, right? So I'm kind of optimistic on what's going to happen next in the industry, because really it's somehow a matter of survival for many players in the industry.
So, Damien, that's a great one. That leads us to one of the questions from the floor here, and I'd be interested in the panel's views. So, what will the priorities be for built environment companies given the impact of COVID-19 on business? Sustainability take a backseat as they fight for survival and look for revenue. Any views on that, panel? Priorities, I guess, is the core theme in that.
No, but if I may, I take it. Short term, I would tend to agree with that. Unfortunately, there's a risk there. But I want to think, and if you see what starts to happen in Singapore and the direction there, I think that people will also more and more realize that sustainability is a better bet on the mid and long term. So yes, there is this risk short term, but I want to think that really, I'll say the sustainability trend is there to stay and will only amplify again post-COVID.
Yeah, I agree with Damien. I think short term, everybody is going to fight for survival, and really that you can last this round of recession that is going to be quite deep. But longer term, sustainability is still a key issue.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I think that particularly, and this is I guess a Hong Kong thing, but particularly in Hong Kong, we've noticed over summer, early part of summer, a significant reduction in pollution. Combination of factors: far less cars on the road in Hong Kong, which is a big factor in that, and secondly was a lot of the factories over the border were closed, and that's really highlighted to everyone some of the issues that we face, and I'm sure it's the same in Singapore and other places. So there's no question, I think I would agree with everyone, short-term survival, absolutely key. But like I said, there are elements of the real estate industry that are not in survival mode. The reality today is that logistics and data centers are in the opposite of survival mode. They can't get enough space. They can't deliver enough space fast enough. They can't get enough approvals from governments to build new facilities fast enough. They've got huge challenges in taking advantage of this incredible surge in demand, but also trying to temper that by saying, is this a real surge or a temporary surge? Is this something we have to cater for long term? And certainly some of it is. So there is still part of the industry that is very much focused on delivering sustainable solutions and can afford to do so. So I think there's a two-pronged strategy there to think about.
Thanks for that. So I'm going to go to a different area of questioning now, and it was called out. I think, Bernie, you called it out earlier about silos and fragmentation. So the question here is: the industry is very specialized but fragmented. To achieve an integrated innovation across industry, do we need more? I'm paraphrasing here. Is it regulation? Is it work culture? What is it that needs to change to achieve that? Any views, Bernie? Why not yourself, since you called it out in the first instance?
Look, I think there's definitely some challenges there. think that what we need to think about though is how do you both protect today and look at tomorrow and really think about what are those two competing streams? What are the advantages that you can come out of this situation? The old story, every cloud has a silver lining. It's partly about finding that silver lining and figuring out how to adopt things and move forward effectively. I'm not I'm never a fan of the quick fix. I think the shortest way out of a problem is the fastest way back into it. So from that perspective, I think there needs to be some careful consideration of what are the next steps, how do we do them, and to do it in a constructive way.
So maybe, Mr. Wong, over to you. Your business covers the whole value chain, delivery chain, essentially. What does that question mean to you? What can be done to overcome that fragmentation?
Well, I think going forward, the implementation of 5G connectivity will tremendously help to transform the entire industry. Both right from design all the way up to facility management. Because presently, we can't share big files across the network that we have. That's preventing us to collaborate, and it's great difficulty at the moment. So we are actively looking at the implementation of 5G and how that will be able to be the track that will be able to integrate the various skill set that today we have within Sabana Jewel. So we're doing that right from design using BEAM, all the way up to Smart FM. How we can use one digital model to tie up all of these ends. So at the end of the day, I think the 5G will probably be pushing a lot of us in the sector to go and embrace deeply the digital technology.
Yeah, I fully agree with Mr. Wong as well. If you can hear me, Will, on the technology front, I think, and it was mentioned also in the opening speech, cloud application are really opening new grounds when it comes to collaboration and interaction and between the different silos. Now, from a mindset and process approach, I want to think that the final owner, landlords of the user of the buildings that have a role to play, because they should be the one looking at the full life cycle. And somehow we have to help them drive education, and awareness to say, hey, if you really somehow ensure that the whole chain works together, and from the design to the construction and then to the services and the FM portion, definitely will create more value. You'll have a more efficient, more sustainable, and safer building, I would say. So probably technology-wise, the cloud, 5G, etc., and then definitely the landlord, the end users, the owners of the building have a role to play, I feel.
Yeah, Will, I'd just add to that. I think that, absolutely right. The whole issue of cloud is important. And it's important from the perspective that organizations need to understand that if you look at modern cybersecurity issues, you look at the current situation, the concept that the server in your back office is safer than a server in a data center. It really shows that whoever thinks that way is really not understanding the big picture of cybersecurity. Right? And adopting cloud is part of the stepping stones to really moving an organization to a modern platform where they can put everything mobile and they can put everything everywhere in terms of both their employees, in terms of tenant engagement, and they can bring all of their data together into one place, right? And then get a proper picture of performance in real time. So it's an important step, and it's something that shouldn't be underestimated. And it's something that if people think that that's not the way to go, they need to really understand, go and look at their thinking and understand what why, people like me are telling them you're wrong, right? It's really about that is the next step. It's an important step. If I look at other parts of the world outside of Asia, talking to clients about how we deliver our services, if we said to them we weren't delivering on cloud, they would run a mile, right? Particularly in a lot of the leading Western markets these days, if you're not on cloud, you're not happening.
Thanks for that. So we have a question here about AR solutions. I guess it's a call out for case studies, if there are any around the table. Are there any existing ways or possible AR solutions being adopted to assist project delivery in the built environment? I guess at the start, Mr. Wong, you did share an example. I think one of those was related to AR, was it not? Is VR collab, is that the direction that it goes in?
Yeah, but the technology of AR is still quite early, and I guess the applications are still not too widespread. For example, today you can possibly get augmented reality to look at the piping systems or the electrical distribution system, through the walls and so on. So that technology is still developing, and I must also say that it is also not cheap to implement some of this technology. So you really need to have a level of business scale to bring in the technology and utilize them. So the next thing that will probably be a hindrance is really the scale of the business that each of the companies have. And of course, this will favor the larger scale companies in the sense that they do have the scale to try and roll out some of these new technologies.
Okay. If I may, one example I have in our own industry is we started to leverage AR together with the digital twins for training purposes. So to train our own services and team when it comes to energy management and the electrical side, because definitely you don't want them to be trained live, right, on live equipment. So AR is really a very good enabler. And then beyond our own services team is also the FM partners that we're working with in the different facilities. So here we're much more on the technology side, see an interesting application for AR and ramping up, I would say.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing, I would say, a lot of value potential in use cases in the FM, in the maintenance, in the break fix part of the cycle. The objective of getting to either one, a predictive maintenance regime that prevents failure, and at the same time a maintenance regime and level of capability where it's fixed once and fixed right the first time is really something that is an aspiration for the industry. The reality, when you look at the business process that goes with that, it actually goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago in terms of cloud and 5G. The volume of data that you need to be able to deliver to a technician and get back from a technician in real time to apply so augmented reality, virtual reality, and or artificial intelligence to drive that process is just enormous and not really viable outside of a 5G environment. The work we've done so far shows that it's really quite important to have that bandwidth.
Well, as a follow-up, Will, an example is that we do now all our designs in BIM. But when you do a designs in BIM, the BIM model is rather huge and it's humongous. But this humongous model may not be necessary for use by the FM sector. So what we have to do is really to strip the BIM model to a basic BIM model and then incorporate some of the sensors, it could be Schneider and so on, then to deliver a smart FM system to our client. So, you can see that today, the technologies are there, but to try and string it across, there are quite a lot of impediments for practitioners like us to try and do that.
So I guess drawing a parallel, a BIM model is a bit like the office or the house over time. It gathers and gathers information, and a lot of it isn't relevant for the next stage.
Exactly.
Okay, I'd like to move over to another area here. In one word, it takes us in a new direction. In one word, it's who. So we've talked about the reluctance to change, the cost of change, the challenges, and that side of things. So I guess the question here, if I summarize, is who do you recommend to lead the innovation and change process? So that could be industry-wide or corporate-wide. It's quite a question. Yes, Mr. Wong.
Well, I think the industry will have to lead it because a lot of these changes and so on will have to be adapted to the actual operations. For government, will be a bit difficult because each of us operate in a different way, and we know best how do we adopt and embrace the technology. So I think industry is a prime mover in trying to change the way that we operate. So it's not possible for governments to just have regulations. Of course, regulations incentivize companies to adopt the technology or to change their processes. But the industry needs to be the driver in such change.
Thanks for that. Damien, any views on that? Sorry, over to you. Over to you, Bernie.
Okay, sure. Look, I think couple of key things in that, and that is, I guess if you look at the industry generally, I think at the end of the day, the government needs to create an environment where innovation is desirable, and certainly, as I said before, Singapore has done a reasonable job of that. Secondly, once that's there, you need to give people the opportunity to go and try stuff and take risks and see what they can achieve. I think the change management is a different story. Again, at an industry level, I think that's some regulation. I think at a corporate level, when I look at our customers, how we deal with our customers, at the end of the day, an organisation needs to own its improvement. So externally injected improvement is, it's like some medicine. It's temporary. It won't last. If the organisation doesn't really adopt, own, and really, look after its own innovation and change, it won't stick. So having that internal capability, I often say to people these days, because I'm older, go back and read Deming. He was good, right? Deming talked about how change actually works in organisations. It's still relevant. Quality circles work, believe it or not. Do that stuff, because at the end of the day, they're the things that means your organisation will own the improvement. And as I look at even our clients, many of them do that. Some of them don't. Some of them don't really own the system. And as a result, they're constantly going, oh, we can't remember how to do this. Oh, why are we using this? All the wrong messages, instead of saying, how can we make this work better? What can we do that's going to give us more value? Where can we drive this next? What can we push harder? And that's about owning it, about taking responsibility for your investment and saying, I really need to make this work. I'm not making an investment just because I have to tick a box. I'm making an investment in change. And that's what it's really about. I say to people who come to us and say they want to buy our system, frankly, I'll say no. So if you want to change your organization, I'll sell you a system that helps. If you just want to buy our system, it's going to be horrible, right? Seriously, think about what you're doing. And that's it. Own the change. That's the important thing.
Yeah, one point I would add on the changes happening is I think while our industry has been very traditional and you see most of the senior management has been in their 40s, if not in their 50s and beyond. Together with the technology coming up, we have also kind of a new breed, of younger engineers who are really digital native and digital savvy. Coming into the industry. So I really feel that the changes today are happening both top down, I would say, in the corporate world, but also bottom up in the industry. With again the new fresh engineers joining our industry and having been trained from day one on leveraging technologies, IT technologies. So that's, I think, is encouraging as well for the future, I would say.
And Bill, I think like the other industry, maybe the major change will happen by players who are not in the industry. Or if they could bring new ideas to how to change this well-entrenched industry. So likely, we think likely that the major change will be by organizations that are not in the built environment. So it could be a new trend that's going to come.
Yeah, I'd add to that as an example. There are very few organizations who even know in real estate, who even know what a data scientist is, let alone where to find one. Yep. And if you're going to talk about AI and big data, you better know what a data scientist is, and better know where to find one.
So to follow up on Bernie's point.
So Bernie, let me. Sorry, over to you first.
Yeah. So to follow on Bernie's point, we've been trying to work with game developers to look at how we can bring their technology to the visualization things that we are doing in the built environment. So as I said, not necessarily the change will come from within the built in the built environment industry. It could come from outside.
So what talent or what skills are missing then? Game working with game developers, you called it, data scientists. What other talents and skills are missing from the industry?
I guess, Will, for our industry, we need to.
Sorry, Mr. Wong. I think Damien was saying something.
Yeah, go ahead, Damien.
No, well, probably another example we could say is manufacturing industrial engineers. People who have worked in the automotive space, where a car is kind of a puzzle, where you assemble the pieces together. Well, if you think about it, a building is more or less the same. So the prefab technologies example is a good one that relates somehow to this idea of really how you make a building like a puzzle the same way you make a car. So manufacturing and industrial engineers to some extent maybe also.
Yeah, process manufacturing, absolutely. Process manufacturing thinking brought to the construction phase, I think, is absolutely critical. And I think that whole idea that then once you get into from design through construction and into operation, think about the building as a device. Right? Think about what's the operating system, what's the user interface, right? And that's both a physical one and one that's on occupants' phones. We've got to think about these things differently.
Fair enough, Mr. Wong.
Well, I think we probably have to bring the old skill set, the civil engineers, the electrical engineers, and combine this with, new skills of software programmers, your analysts, your process engineers, to look at a new way of, executing the works that we are doing. And this is possible through with digital technology. It's a bit hard for a human mind to try and do such a big, a big building, for example, digitally. But using computers, we can do that. For example, we can now create external facade through the computers and use standard components. Yeah? In other words, reduce the number of components in a facade such that you can manufacture this in a factory and achieve what Damien says about bringing the manufacturing thinking into building construction. So it's a marrying of all the skill sets. Unfortunately, in our built environment, we have so many skills that is required to make up a building or make up a road or build an airport. So the process is much more complicated than manufacturing. So I guess it will take us a while to try and incorporate these new skills and new technology in the things that we do.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you all a closing question. As we know, we're kicking off IBEW, a month of activity. What would you recommend today's attendees look out for over the next month in terms of IBEW? What are the themes that you think they should be picking up? What are the specific areas that they should be looking out for? Bernie, do you want to go first?
Oh, look, I think I always say in this situation, I don't like to constrain people's thinking, but I'd also say,
all right, what should they not be looking out for?
Well, I still think the guidance would be, at the end of the day, looking at the same question in a different way. In other words, what are you selling to who and for how much? And what that really means is, what's the problem you're trying to solve, right? Who cares about that problem, and how much value does it create? Now, and no matter what you're thinking about, and that's one of the challenges I have. I think about 10,000 things, but you can't do all of them. Is which ones do you want to do? And the secret to success, in my view, is apply that methodology, and you will very quickly understand that there are certain things where there's a group of people and enough people who care enough about a particular problem that it's worth focusing on because there's value there. And the examples from our perspective are things like IoT, things like various forms of process automation, whether that's machine learning, robotics, or AI, and then also about helping senior executives in the real estate industry understand that there's a different way of acquiring and getting performance data. One of the interesting, totally unrelated to COVID, challenges at that senior level, particularly in the private equity space, is as MSCI and others have included real estate in indexes, and it's suddenly become part of what institutions have to invest in. Those institutional investment managers have always been used to getting instant data. They look at Bloomberg, they get data. They look at Reuters, they get data. And then they look at their real estate investments and go, why haven't you guys got data? And why is the data you have got wrong and 6 weeks old? It's fixing those sorts of problems as well.
Thank you for that. Damien, what would your views be on what we should be looking out for over the next month?
Yeah, so the program is rather exciting. So and I agree. I don't want to influence, etc. But probably one thing, and to come back to what we were discussing earlier, I think all the sessions where you have opportunity to be exposed to innovation and new technologies is very. I mean, to me, it's going to be, I'm sure, very interesting, and it's always good to benchmark and learn new things. When I was running factories, I used to say to the plant manager asking me, how can I be the best factory in the whole network, And I used to say, well, before you let your own innovation and creativity speak, benchmark the others. Take all the best practices for everyone another, and then put them all together in your own factory, and you'll already be one step ahead. So to me, benchmarking and opportunities to benchmark, probably because it's close to our heart, I also did register for the sustainability track on the week 2. And then I think we should never forget, and definitely the smart FM side, because to me, we tend to forget the FM part of the whole chain. And they are inheriting what has been I would say, developed before, and there's a big portion of the cost that will come through the OPEX phase. So the session on week 3 around the smart FM looks interesting as well.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Wong, what's your view on what people should be looking out for?
Well, I think I would encourage our viewers to look at the innovation part, because in our sector there are a lot of new innovations coming up, and it's quite difficult for each and every one of us to avail to some of these innovations and how people are doing things in a new way. So I would encourage the viewers to look at innovation. The other, of course, is that the session on reimagining the built environment, where people can share what their thoughts are, and as I said, the built environment is rather diverse and siloed, as Bernie says. So a learning of what other people's thought process are, and then reflect back on your own operations would be quite useful. So this probably will be two areas that I will encourage viewers to look at.
Thank you. So may I take this opportunity to thank all three of you, Bernie, Damien, Wong Hin Fine, for your insight today. It's been fascinating from my perspective. It's a huge piece to cover, innovation in the way that we have, and I think you've really taken us along the whole life cycle, digitization, collaboration, resilience, all the aspects that we know will be coming up over the next week. So thank you once again to my three panelists, and also just like to wish everyone in the audience, make the most of the month of content that is on offer, and I'm wishing you all the best for International Built Environment Week. Thank you once again.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all your questions. I trust that it was a fruitful session for everyone. And thank you once again to our panel of speakers and Will for moderating this afternoon's Spotlight Plenary.
Thank you.
I would like to take this opportunity to invite all of you to visit the virtual trade shows, which are also hosted, to find out the latest products and technologies from key industry players and emerging brands. We do have more exciting sessions lined up for the rest of September, so be sure to join us for more insightful sharing. We hope to see you then.